From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse Podcast. And I just wanted to unpack some things that have been relevant in my one-on-one coaching calls and in our group coaching, and even in my own organization. There's a level of stress amongst the team, mainly because of this feeling of being understaffed. Right? So we're understaffed. We're doing too much dentistry for the team that we have to support them, especially administratively. A little bit in the back as well. But typically what happens is the front desk it gets overwhelmed, or they feel a sense of being overwhelmed, and they go to the doctor and they say, we need help. And the doctor wants to be able to help them, but once they look at their P&L, they realize that they're already significantly over budget when it comes to staff wages, and the margins are already thinner than they really want. So adding another team member or outsourcing more and more of the duties of the front desk costs more, will definitely help with stress, but costs more and ultimately leads to less profitability, which causes stress to the doctor, right? Because they have tax payments and debt payments and things like that. So I wanted to just share just some thoughts in regards to asking ourselves the question, are we overstaffed or understaffed? And getting clarity on that. And then what can we do about it if we are in fact understaffed? So I'm going to just share some numbers with you that I've used in presentations. And I hate sharing numbers because a lot of coaching clients, students in my lectures, listeners to the podcast will take these numbers and automatically associate it to them. And if they're not meeting this standard, then they, fly off the handle, so to speak. Just realize that numbers and metrics and stuff like that are just meant to be guidelines. They can't be associated with every specific situation. A great example to get outside of dentistry is BMI, right? So for those of you guys that don't know what BMI is, the government, maybe 30 years ago, I'm sure somebody listening knows way better than me about this, but they came up with a formula that took your total weight and your height and punched it into a formula, and out comes this, what they call BMI number, right? And if you're above a certain BMI number, you're considered overweight, and if you're above even that higher number, you're considered obese. So I'm 190, currently about 192 pounds. And I'm 5'9.5". So based on BMI standards, I'm considered obese, but I'm not. My body fat typically runs in the 14 to 15% range. It's been as low as 6% last year for my bodybuilding show. So that number is not relatable to me. And I get that. I'm educated enough to understand that, so it doesn't bother me. But someone that's not, and educated is not the right word, but someone that's ignorant to this type of information, and again, I don't mean ignorant in a derogatory way, I simply mean ignorant in a uninformed way. If people are ignorant to how BMI works and the loopholes with BMI, then they would see this number and they would make conclusions and completely turn over their health and fitness life in order to fit within this BMI box. So again, that's just a poor analogy of how sometimes numbers are not completely relatable to everyone in every situation. So with that caveat, let me share some metrics that I do feel work well for evaluating if we're producing enough dentistry, if we're overstaffed, if we're understaffed, things like that. So there's really two metrics that I like to use on a regular basis. One is efficiency from a per chair per hour basis. So this is what a lot of DSOs do to evaluate if an office is in fact efficient. So they'll take the total number of chairs in a organization, in a practice, let's say, and the hours that they're open, and they'll evaluate how many dollars per chair per hour is being produced. And a lower producing, quote unquote, inefficient practice will average about $150 per hour per chair. And a office that's very efficient, borderline redlining, is $200 per office, per hour per chair. So to use an example of that, if you have a 5-chair office and you're open 8 hours a day, then you should ultimately be producing 5 times somewhere in between 150 and 200 times 8. So you can do the math on that and kind of figure out where you're at from a facility productivity perspective. But most of the questions that I have to do with team members. So this metric I really, really like when it comes to evaluating if a team is understaffed or overstaffed. And again, generalizations here, kind of like the BMI conversation. This is for a bread and butter PPO insurance driven practice, not a practice that's makes all of their decisions via insurance, but takes some insurance and what have you. And the metric is that you should be producing in between $20,000 and $25,000 per non-doctor team member per month. I'll say that again. $20,000 on the low end, $25,000 on the high end per non-doctor team member per month. So let's break that down. Let's say we have a single doctor that has 2 people at the front. Let's say an office manager and a front desk person, treatment coordinator. 2 people helping the doctor from an assistant perspective, and 2 hygienists. So that's 2, 2, and 2. Remember, we're not including a doctor. So that's 6 people at this dental office. On the low end of productivity, 20,000 times 6 should be $120,000 per month. On the high end of productivity should be those 6 people times 25,000 or $150,000 per month. So if you have 6 team members and you're a bread and butter general dentist that has fair fees, you're going to be around $120,000 to $150,000 per month in adjusted production or revenue. Now again, if you're an all-on-X guy, it's a different story. If you're an orthodontist, it's a different story. But a gross majority of our listeners and a gross majority of the docs that I coach are bread and butter dentists that participate with insurance. That's what I am. I'm a bread and butter dentist that participates with insurance. So a really good rule of thumb is 20,000 on the low end, 25,000. Now you may be doing the math in your head and you may be saying, Jason, I have 6 team members and I'm doing $175,000 a month. And you might be beating your chest and patting yourself on the back. And don't get me wrong, that's great. But what I've experienced, both personally and with a lot of my clients, is you're redlining your team. And that level of productivity is not sustainable long term. So whenever we start to get into the 30,000 per team member per month, 35,000 per team member per month, it's a red flag for me to say, okay, I have great people here. They're working hard, but they're going to get burnt out. and I need to take my foot off the gas, or more importantly, I need to figure out a way to support them either through an additional team member or through delegating tasks differently amongst the team, and then outsourcing some of these tasks. So that's the first domino that needs to fall in terms of asking yourself, am I over or understaffed? Use that metric, $20,000 to $25,000 per team member per month. Unfortunately, when most of us do that math, we find that we're probably overstaffed already, and the team is coming to you saying, we need help. Very, very common. And the reality is, you can get very frustrated by this request, but this is an awesome opportunity, right? When people come to me, coaching clients, even my own team, and they say, we're drowning, we need help, the first thing I want to do, or the first thing I go back to is, well, what are our costs when it comes to the staff, wages, right? If I'm already borderline high, or if I'm already on the low end of that metric that we just unpacked, then I can't be a fiscally responsible organization and just hire more people. So if that option's off the table, the next strategy to consider is evaluating our efficiencies, and do we have the right people in the right seat, and are the tasks associated with everything distributed fairly. So let's look at it from a front desk perspective, because a majority of the stress is felt from a front desk perspective. So what I like to do, an exercise that I feel really works well and resonates with teams that have 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 team members at the front, is you dedicate a half day and you take this team to lunch, or you just get off site and you have everyone bring their checklists and their job descriptions and what we call our roles and responsibilities documents, and you put on a post-it note. You lay out hundreds of post-it notes on the table, and you put every single task on a post-it note, and you take all of these post-it notes, you take a step back and you see them all on the table or all on the wall or what have you. And then you start to redistribute these post-it notes based on the people you have on your team, their skill set, their desire, their what Patrick Lencioni would call their working genius. And you'll find that when people start to have tasks on their checklist that really fuel them, that fire them up, and then that don't drain them, they're more efficient at said tasks. So I'll give you 2 simple examples. One is non-facing tasks, non-patient facing tasks, I'm sorry. So insurance verification, AR management, billing, all of these things that one of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tasks that need to be done in order for a dental office to run smoothly. Well, people are wired differently. We have some employees that absolutely love the analytical, non-patient facing tasks. So if we identify someone like that on our team, we want to give them a majority of those tasks, because that fuels them. Lencioni, through his book and assessment Working Genius, will tell you that it's those people that are wired to do that kind of work, they don't really even consider it work because they enjoy doing it. It's when we're giving tasks to people that they truly don't enjoy that it drains them. So someone that thrives in a non-patient facing way with non-patient facing tasks can take on more of those non-patient facing tasks and do them at a high level. So like I said, billing, insurance verification, all of the account stuff in your software, versus someone that can drown from doing those non-patient facing number tasks, right? So you might have not to get into disc profiling, but you might have someone that is very social, that loves to talk to people, that loves to smile, that thrives off the energy of being around other people. They may be a perfect treatment coordinator. They may be someone ideal to present treatment, to follow up on treatment, to be a great empathetic listener when patients are saying, I want to get this treatment done, but these are my obstacles, that works with the doctor to fill their schedule. Like, if you are going to give these tasks to someone that doesn't like to talk to people, that is more analytical and less emotional, they're going to drown. They're going to be frustrated throughout their working week, and they're not going to be as motivated to do a great job when it comes to these tasks. So you give those tasks to someone who loves to do those things. And all of this can come out during this exercise where you have every single task that a front desk is responsible for on a Post-it note on this table. And you basically give the team the right to, I want to do this task, I want to do this task. Now again, the caveat here is we're all on a team. We're going to treat each other with respect. We're not going to have one person take 3 or 4 tasks that are very, very easy and call it a day. We're going to have some person in a leadership position, the dentist and office manager, kind of make sure that this is being done fairly. But I have found that when you go through that exercise of redistributing tasks and redistributing it in a way that fills up someone's cup, because you're giving them now responsibilities that they actually enjoy doing, all of a sudden this weight is lifted and 2 things happen. People are doing tasks more efficiently, and they're actually doing them at a higher level because they're tasks that they love to do. So if you're faced with that conundrum of the front desk feeling overwhelmed, and you're also faced with the conundrum of, well, they're only doing $18,000 per team member per month, so you already know that you're overstaffed based on what you're producing, and you can't throw another team member at the problem. Yes, that will fix it, but it costs too much money based on your current level of profitability and efficiency. Then this Post-it note exercise is a really good tool, really good exercise to go through to figure out how you could redistribute tasks amongst a team that will give each team member responsibilities that will fill up their cup and that will feel more like a working genius task than a working frustration task, again, to use Lencioni's terminology. So those are a couple things that I think are really, really good ideas to consider. First, identify if you're underproducing or if you're not. Then identify if you're understaffed or not. Also, a side note to that is identify if you're redlining your team, like I had mentioned, using those metrics. And then if you are underproducing yet overstaffed, then the redistributing of those tasks is a really good exercise to go through to try to alleviate the problem. The final thing I'll share with you guys, and this happened actually in a group coaching situation that we had a couple weeks ago. An office manager in our group was sharing frustration with her owner doctor on the fact that she felt the administrative team was drowning and the administrative team really needed help. But because the owner looked at a P&L and saw that well over 30% of revenue was going towards staff wages already, he put a hiring freeze on any new people. So if that was all the context that you had, you would say, okay, I can agree with that, doctor. Based on what Jason just said, got to put a hiring freeze on, and you have to redistribute tasks amongst the front desk. Well, there's more to the story. So the other side of the story is this was a 3-doctor, 6-hygienist practice, and there was 4 people supporting the team administratively, right? Which, without knowing the rest of the situation, I think to myself, That's pretty low. 4 people supporting a 3-doctor, 6-hygienist practice. Again, you may have 4 people supporting a 3-doctor, 6-hygienist practice and doing it extremely successfully. You are a unicorn, or your 3 doctors are seeing 3 to 4 patients a day. You're fee for service. You're doing full arches and stuff like that. It's a very different animal than the caveat I've already kind of unpacked of a typical bread and butter PPO driven practice, which this was, right? A couple specialists in there, but for the most part, a bread and butter PPO driven practice. So again, just to rewind the tape, 3 doctors, 6 hygienists, already spending more than 30% of their revenue on wages. Doctor put a hiring freeze on. Only 4 people supporting them from an administrative perspective. So then you start to scratch your head. You're like, well, what's going on here? Like, if there's only 4 people at the front desk and you're well over 30% as a percentage of revenue in terms of your wages, there's got to be more to the story here. So as you start to unpack this, as a coach, I love to just ask questions, truly based in curiosity, no judgment. I just need to get to the root cause. Well, it turns out that this doctor had 10 assistants supporting 3 doctors. And I'm all for being overstaffed to a certain extent, especially with assistants. They're vital for the ability of a doctor to produce. 90% of the time, we typically only need 2 assistants per doctor, unless you're a unicorn, right? And conversation for another day. You guys have heard me talk about scheduling templates for unicorns. But had 10 assistants to support 3 doctors. I could see 7 assistants to support 3 doctors, maybe a sterilization kind of floater person. I could even see 8. 8 would be a stretch for me, but I could see 8. But 10? So there was the root issue. You were 30%, your wages were 30% of revenue because you had 10 clinical assistants and weren't producing enough dentistry to support 10 clinical assistants. So what are the solutions in this particular situation? Well, the best, most immediate solution, in my opinion, was to take one of those 10 assistants, find out which one has any level of administrative or front desk history and that wants to help in that regard, and bring them to the front desk, right? And again, go through this task exercise, this Post-it note exercise that we talked about, and unload a number of these tasks to this new person, redistributing the responsibilities at the front desk. Doing that is not going to fix the payroll issue, but it'll prevent and help burnout and morale at the front desk. And then the final question that I was trying to figure out, and we started to unpack towards the end of this group session, was what is the case acceptance of this practice? And the office manager admitted that the case acceptance has been slowly but surely dwindling down because so many balls are in the air, so many things are getting dropped at the front desk because of how understaffed they are. So yes, I agree with the idea of a hiring freeze when you're significantly overstaffed as a percentage of your collections. But you have to start to ask more questions before you make a final decision on what your strategy is going to be. And in this particular case, if we didn't coach up this group to make some changes and he just drew a line in the sand and said, we're staying at our current staffing level, we're not hiring anyone until we get this in line, the problem would have actually gotten worse as case acceptance would have went down and he would have been in even more trouble. So really unique situation from a couple weeks ago in our group coaching session. I felt like we were able to identify what was going on and gave the office manager some strategies, some corrective measures. They're going to take 1 or 2 of those assistants, take one and make them a front desk person for the next few months, maybe another assistant as a floater, and then report back with what's happening, and then we'll go from there. So that's always my strategy. Let's implement something. Let's measure it. We'll revisit it in a month, and it's either working or it's not. And you have to be a scientist. You have to say, okay, if it's working, great, let's double down on it. If it's not working, okay, I thought that would work and it didn't. And be vulnerable enough to be like, okay, I can put my ego aside. I thought this was going to work. It's not. It's time to pivot. Let's investigate another option. So again, just some ramblings about, are you overstaffed? Are you understaffed? Is your facility producing at the ideal level? Is it underproducing? Just some things to consider. Any questions about this stuff? As always, please don't hesitate to reach out. All my contact information is on the website, dentallighthouse.com. I'd love to be able to help you navigate a problem like this if that's what you're facing, and go from there. Love you guys. Talk soon.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.